Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Higher Density Living. It's a beautiful day here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we are officially a 501c3 not-for-profit. Not to thank the IRS, because they're a private company, and I have absolutely no respect for them. But I'm glad we finally got it to work.
Yeah, how long did it take?
2 years?
Yeah.
What a ridiculous process.
It's no private industry could be successful.
No, they don't want you to be successful. You're penalized. You know, people say penalized.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're penalized in the United States for taking risks.
But I mean,
you're
I'm talking about
for wanting to educate
if I
people.
came to a company, I said, "Hey, I need this for my business." Let's say it's Shopify.
Okay.
And I need to open up because we're going to be opening up a store, and we're working with Shopify on opening up the store.
And everyone listening should probably buy some.
Yeah, some merch. We need some merch.
Yeah, merch.
And so t-shirts, cool shit like that, alien stuff. It'll be awesome. And so you go to Shopify, and they're like, "Yeah, we'll get a store for you. We don't mind. It's going to be real basic, and it's going to take about 2 years for us to do it."
It was the best. You go to a car dealership.
Yeah.
You go in. You give them all your money.
Yeah.
After tax money.
Yeah.
You can pick up the car in 2 years.
Yeah. Exactly.
Wait a minute, how do I get to work?
It's like the efficiency of any government program. That's why I know capitalism isn't like the best thing in the world.
No.
But it's way better than
government run everything.
Government run everything. And, you know, I was watching a program on YouTube about the fall of the Soviet Union. You know, and then Putin,
I just literally had the word communist running through my
head. And
That's
then
so funny.
Putin comes in and kind of saves the day. That's why everybody loves him, because they don't know. It's like, what will happen to Russia after Putin? Everybody's fearful of that.
Who's powerful enough?
Yeah. I mean, because he's
going to pick the next guy.
Yeah.
Let's all be clear.
He'll be sitting in his $1 billion home he built.
Weightlifting.
Yeah. At 80.
Yeah, at 80 in his tracksuit.
telling him what to do.
Yeah.
But it's so funny because it's you look at socialism, that failed.
Yep.
I mean, if you look at any country, the United States,
the government on top.
Yes. The United States, with our capitalism, which we have a lot of complaints on.
Yeah.
It's still kicking ass.
Yeah. Even though you're penalized for taking risks, it's still saying put some work in.
Yeah. So I would rather
have the work thing down. I
would rather have a private organization. And the IRS is a private organization, but they're government backed and everything else, like Federal Reserve. And I don't want to get into. We'll do a whole show on that.
You don't want to get into the truth. You want to get into how we're getting
it's scammed? Higher density living.
Yeah, this is higher density living.
I think we did one. Didn't we do one a long time ago?
We might have.
With taxes and IRS. I think we did.
I was pretty fucking fired up.
Yeah, I think we did. Well, it's so funny. I showed you. I got.
Here we go.
I did my taxes. I got a letter from New Mexico that said I owed $57. No explanation why. I got a letter from the IRS that said I owed $22.43. Yeah. No explanation why. The state of New Mexico, I couldn't go online and pay it. I had to send them
money on
a check.
Yeah.
I mean, what year is this? 1996?
I went on the IRS.
That was 40 years ago.
You ready for this? I go on the IRS's website. I owe them. First of all, they send me a letter in the mail saying I owe $3,700. And I'm like, for what? I don't understand. I mean, I got a W-2. You guys take taxes out all the time. Why do I owe you more money?
Yeah.
So then I called them like, oh, you don't owe that much. You owe this much. And I'm like, what the fuck?
It's like if you wouldn't have called them and sent them $3,700.
By the way, it took me 3 days to call them because they automatically kick you off the line because they got too many people calling in. Oh, and then when I went to go pay it, their system was down.
Oh, that's the perfect example of
I'm like, oh, super. And you know what the best part is? I'm paying a tax bill with after-tax money.
Yes.
It's a fucking scam. Like right out of the gate.
Here's the biggest scam. It's like, if I sell you my car right now, I have to go and pay taxes again.
Which is dumb.
But
the taxes
I already paid taxes when I bought it once.
Yeah, it's already.
Why am I every time I sell something having to pay taxes over and over again?
I know, it's stupid.
I don't understand that. How a home?
Yeah, why?
How much money are they making off of real estate?
Why do they deserve to collect when they've put in no work?
Well, I mean, it's very clear. The founding fathers said double taxation. That's not going to happen.
No taxation without representation.
We've got quadruple and 16x taxation.
We're one of the highest tax countries in the world.
And I don't mind paying taxes. Not at all. You know, I'm kind of more centric in my political views.
I don't. Yeah.
If it was
reasonable,
and
logical.
And if people were running it properly, it just becomes these big behemoth, like the military industrial complex. You know, I was in the Marine Corps. I saw waste
all the time.
I saw what it was, you know.
That's all it is waste.
Yeah, like the Canadians, when they were in Iraq, they built a ice ring. It's just cool.
Yeah,
but that's expensive.
Just stop wasting money. And by the way, can we stop shooting each other? Like, can we take 2 seconds and not throw lead into each other's chest?
Yeah, that's a whole thing with. But I mean, because you have to have the military-industrial complex in order to fund these large corporations. War is profitable for
everybody,
the elite.
Yeah, they love it. So,
and then it helps humanity too, because in the sense of it creates bonding, togetherness, patriotism.
You bet it does.
Supposedly,
patriotism still means you succumb to like a flag or something.
Speaking of Russians, that's what we're going to talk about today.
One positive note. I will before we get into the Russian front here. There's one thing I love about New Mexico. I went for a 30-minute walk yesterday. 5 minutes into the walk, I see a guy riding a horse, and he's got 2 other horses with him.
Oh.
But no one's on those horses. I yelled at him. I was like, hey, you need help riding those horses? And he said, you bet I do. Hopped right on the horse, started riding it around. I didn't even know who the guy was. It was the greatest walk of my life. I'm literally sprinting down through the cottonwood trees over here on the Rio Grande.
Yes.
And I'm just on some dude's horse. And the thing is just pouring sweat. Like the hair on it is soaked.
And he loved it, huh?
Yeah, he loved it. I loved it.
So the guy was just like, yeah, ride on my horse.
Yeah, you can ride my horse.
That's so cool.
That
whole area is full of, over by the river here, if you're not from Albuquerque, the only water is the river. Because we're high desert.
Very high desert. But I'm going to transition here with this. There was a connection when you sit on a horse. All my stress just disappeared in like a moment's notice. And there was a reaction between me and the horse. We're not one. But there's an understanding of the relationship between me being on this animal who doesn't even know who I am.
Right.
But when I hopped on, it's like looking at me like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, who is this guy? Yes. I'm just a random dude jumping on an animal's back, right? And the guy's like, wow, I most people get a little nutty when they do that. So I'm on there, and the horse is extremely reactive in a good sense, where only the slightest leg pressure is allowing me to turn this horse.
That's
right?
so awesome.
I'm like, and the thing goes into a trot. Thing's full on fucking gallop, like flying. Right? And then I'm like, whoa. And that thing just lands right down, blocks it off. But the interesting part about this, just because there might be a relationship maybe one in the sense of a working relationship between man and horse.
Right.
It doesn't mean that the cells at a cellular level have a relationship where I can just breed with a horse and create a centaur.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
But people think that these things, these relational things, whether it be image, right, with a chimpanzee and a human, that maybe at some sort of cellular level, that there should be some bonding that should occur.
Well, it's like the lady that was fucking the dolphin.
Yeah, correct.
And giving it LSD and all
just
that
because
stuff.
we're both mammals.
Yeah, and you can have sex with they do that. They have places where you can go have sex with a dolphin or whatever, and dolphins love it.
Of course, dolphins are sex
they don't
crazy.
Care. Yeah, they're sex crazy. But that doesn't mean that you're going to have a dolphin baby.
No.
It also doesn't mean that there's a connection there that could be spiritual or...
And let's be clear. How long have chimpanzees been around? Orangutans?
Oh, forever.
Forever. How long have human beings been around? Forever. Why has there not been a natural hybrid?
Mm-hmm.
So now is when we transition into the Russians.
The Russian scientist.
Did that bridge work?
The bridge worked perfectly.
All right.
Ivanov is his last name. His first name, I don't know.
Ilya.
Yeah. He tried to create a Humanzee. So like a chimpanzee that was a human.
Yep.
And he's a biologist, Russian biologist. He was a master in the field of animal hybridization and artificial insemination. So now this thing is cool. I studied this a while because I thought it was so interesting with cows.
Oh,
and
how
they breed cows, and then they get horses. They do it too. It's a big deal. I mean, you can have horses that are worth $1 million.
So, I've seen this firsthand. They take this giant electrode thing, and they shove it essentially in the male bull or the horse or whatever it is. They don't really use it that much in horses. They'll actually use their hands. But what it does is it'll stimulate the ejaculation. Right. So they're trying to get the sperm out of this horse without actually having to go around and just so that way you can have essentially targeted breeding.
Yeah, no one wants to just walk around whacking off horses.
No, nobody. Honestly, nobody wants to do it. There are points when
There
they
are
have to do
maybe
it.
someone, but
Yeah, maybe some
weird fuck.
weirdos. But when they do that, they collect all of that semen,
right.
and they'll keep it frozen or whatever. But then they can choose throughout the cattle or the other horses who they want to breed the genetics with.
Yes.
And then from that, there's certain gains through animal husbandry of taking that process.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can look at race horses, or you can look at those trick horses that do all the. It was really cool. It was on Yellowstone. I don't know if you remember the episode where he brought all the horses in, and the guy was saying this one's 500,000. This one's
oh my god, yeah. Oh, this is a $3 million horse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that all came from breeding.
It's breeding over time.
Yeah.
For instance, the gentleman I was riding horses with yesterday, his horse was half Arabian, half Frisian, I think it's called, something like that.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Enormous horse. And I'm like, why is this horse so big? He said, these are the ones that the kings used to ride. And this looked like a king's horse. Like, yeah. I was like, that horse had such a stoic presence. It almost makes you back up for a second because you're in awe of the size of this animal.
Yeah, right.
And the way it stands.
Right.
Where was I going with this?
But there was a reason that happened.
There was a huge reason that happened. And that sort of breeding is fundamentally important. So, for instance, in New Mexico here, down in White Sands, before it became a missile range, it actually had one of the largest populations of wild horses in the state. They were all just down there, just like interbreeding. You had all different types of horses. And what happened was the government, in their infinite wisdom, showed up and put a fence around the entire thing. It locked the horses in, and they were no longer able to go out and feed on the grasses or what have you. So 3,000 plus horses, natural wild horses in that area, died. And that was about 50s in the 1950s. And so all that natural breeding that was occurring allows for an intermixing of these strong working American breeds.
Well, I mean, it's like elk are the same way, like they're the females are very exclusive. They only want like the super strong alpha.
But they recognize that.
Yeah, they recognize that.
But the thing is,
but that's evolution.
But there's an evolution to it. But when we're looking at Ilya Ivanov, he's coming in and he's saying, well, just for scientific purposes, because I see a relationship, I wonder if I can just breed these two things together.
Right. Well, he did that. He came up with the Z-donk, which is the zebra and the donkey.
Right.
And we've seen those, and you can look at those online. And then a guinea pig mouse.
Right.
So, I mean, you can get pretty close, but taking a human to chimpanzee, now you're talking like a whole different... I don't see any animal being able to be successfully bred with a human, just because, and we can get into that a little bit later, but just because it's so, we're so different.
At a cellular level, we're different. People want to say, oh, well, our genetics are super close. They may be close, right? And here's how I would describe this. I'm going to tune into a radio station.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the vibration that's being emitted. So I can hear something. Now, just because it's on 107.9, if I put it to like 107.6, it's relatively close.
Yes.
Right? Within a very small margin.
Yes.
But it's a completely different frequency.
Yes.
And so that allows one sound to come through here and one to come over here.
Well, I thought this was interesting because whenever you look at these Humanzee experiments, you always hear evolutionists talk about, and I believe in evolution and all that, certain parts of it, but you always believe them talking about like humans, like part human, part ape, and they interbreeded back and forth, and they even they talk about, 100,000 years ago, they were breeding and stuff like that. And it's like this right here, this whole experiment that he did
shows you it's not
proves
true.
that it's not true. It's wrong. It can't happen.
It shows you that Darwin's wrong.
Yes, exactly.
Frankly, it does.
I mean, he was right in a lot of things, but wrong in that.
Yeah, if we actually evolved from knuckle-dragging apes up to an upright human being, there's no reason we shouldn't be able to go back and breed with the same thing.
Well, my process with that all is like, where are these fuckers?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, right now, if this is a process, eventual process, that timeline...
We're all the mid-stages.
Right now, we should still have some.
We should still see
They said, well, that was millions of years ago. It didn't happen all at once.
It doesn't just go overnight.
Yeah.
No, you should be able to see these stages.
There should be, in Papua New Guinea, in a jungle somewhere, there should be a half ape dude.
Yeah, but there's not.
No.
So
So and
So
no
what do
one's seen them. I mean, they've talked about them, but they're as elusive as even more elusive than Bigfoot.
So how do we name this episode? Like, why Humanzee hybrids proved that Darwinism is a lie?
This is what I want to kind of get into this a little bit because this is super cool. In 1910, Ivanov brings forward this idea of Humanzee to the World Congress of Zoologists in Australia. Isn't that so cool?
It's such cool stuff back then.
Yes.
Yeah, the World's Fair, World's Congress of Zoology, you know, balloonists, or like whatever it is, you know, it's like, it's
They were it was so cool back in those days. But I mean, wouldn't that be cool just to sit in the room of the World Congress of Zoologists and hear these bright minds?
Or not so bright.
Yeah, or not so bright. So in his presentation, he claimed that it might one day be possible to create hybrids between humans and their closest relatives using artificial insemination. At the time, of course, it was just speculation, but the Russian Revolution in 1917 changed that. And so in 1924, Ivanov put his proposals for a human-chimp hybridization experiment to the government. So he's going to the government.
Guys, you got to get the government to pay for it. They'll do anything stupid.
So although the scientific community, they must have rejected him at the World Congress of Zoology.
Yeah, because they're like, dude, no. I think it was a function of ethics for them. People are all happy all day long, crossbreeding animals and plants and stuff like that. But the second you start crossbreeding human beings, they're like, oh, you've stepped on the moral. It's
a ethical.
Yeah, it's a moral ethical issue.
Well, plus back then they were religious. You know, like maybe they were Catholic or Christian or something.
Does
like
that chimpanzee look like a man of God?
Yeah, exactly. So they, I mean, that could. So I can imagine that. But he got approval from the government, and so he funded a trip to Africa to go and collect apes.
Where did he go? He went to French West Africa.
Yeah, he secured a passport with the support of what institute?
Pasteur Institute. So pasteurization, I know we were talking about cows, but Albert Pasteur, they're like, yeah, you know, why not? You need some money? We got plenty of it. Let's start working on artificially inseminating some chimps.
Yeah, so I mean, this was interesting. So he goes to French West Africa in late March of 1926, and
none of the
he
chimps.
gets
sorry.
He gets chimps, but they were mature enough to breed.
They're not mature. That chimp's not of age.
So he has to. So this was failed.
Yeah.
So he has to go back in November. So he's coming from Russia to Africa. That's a pretty big haul back in
2 round trips.
1926.
Yeah.
So he has to so he's got to get some breeding chimpanzees.
Yeah.
So despite his efforts, his experiments in French Guinea failed, and none of the chimps conceived. So he was like, "This has got to work," you know. And it's funny when this is a part of if we look at the philosophical part of humans that I really like. Okay. I like that we don't give up.
No, we don't.
And most of
we're tinkerers.
Most of the great ideas, and this one wasn't, but most of the great ideas come from the 100th time, the 200th time. You know, after the 99 failures, it's that one time.
How many times have you and I screwed up?
Oh, yeah. I mean, come on.
But
I screw up 100 times a day.
I know. It's just our natural evolution. But here's what's interesting is that he thought that a human embryo could be held inside a chimpanzee's body. First, that body is not designed to carry that sort of weight or size. It just doesn't. Chimps are small. Chimps are like, I don't know, probably like about this high.
Yes.
You know, it's not designed for that kind of structure. Nothing about it.
Yeah, so that didn't, he couldn't get them to conceive, the female chimps. So he came up with a new idea.
Yeah, here we go.
In which he aimed to fertilize a human female with the sperm from a male chimpanzee.
Invert. Here we go.
So he got an assortment of chimps to stock a new ape nursery in the subtropical Soviet Republic of Abkhazia. Abkhazia, yeah.
Where the hell is Abkhazia?
And this is the crazy part.
Tell me.
He said at least 5 women volunteered for this bizarre experiment. Were they told to, because this is Russia, so.
It's part of Georgia.
Were they told to, it said that it was subtropical. That's what's weird.
Well,
it said subtropical. Like, is there like a special little, I thought that was very interesting. You don't think of Soviet Republic as being subtropical.
Oh, it's near the Black Sea. So Abkhazia. Where is that? Hold on one second.
What do the images look like? Does it look subtropical?
None of this stuff's in English. Okay, so Abkhazia is east of the Black Sea.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope that helps. I didn't know that was considered subtropical in that area.
Yeah, it's crazy. So these 5 women volunteer
North of Iran.
north of Iran. Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Because Iran would be
Desert.
yeah.
So
yeah,
it's probably
if
the
you're near
area
the water
before you
that could be-
transition past the Black Sea up to the Caucasus Mountains.
Yeah, there you go.
Got it.
But the apes that he had brought back to his new ape nursery, they didn't flourish because this was unfamiliar surroundings. You know, he would have done better off to stayed in Africa
They ate each
and
other.
done this. Yeah, and by 1929, when he was ready to finally proceed with doing this, he had one adult male left, which he had named Tarzan,
He was an orangutan.
a 26-year-old orangutan.
Yep.
And he ended up suffering from a brain hemorrhage and died.
How the hell did the orangutan get a brain hemorrhage?
I don't know if he was
Was he beating them into submission?
or was he pumping them up full of like experimental drugs to give them like more
Who knows?
testosterone?
Yeah, who knows what else he had to do as like a side pitch to get his
yeah,
funding?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
Chimps don't just drop dead, right? You've seen them. They hang out in cages and
Yes.
you can throw them food. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter where they are.
Yeah, exactly. So he had new apes coming that were coming to his facility in 1930.
Ape on order.
But before they could, Ivanov fell victim to the widespread purge of Soviet scientists and was exiled to Kazakhstan. Although he was released the following year, he remained in exile.
Do we have to brush over that?
Yeah,
So earlier stages of communism that were occurring, the last thing you need are intellectual minds challenging government structures.
Yes.
So what they wanted to do is essentially purge knowledge out so that the leading authority on what you should be doing or how you should live or science comes from the state specifically.
Yeah, and this is it. People don't realize this. When communism in the 1930s, communism was kind of the in vogue thing. There was the Communist Party here in the United States,
Personal privilege.
in UK. I mean, there was a lot of respected people that had decided to become communists.
Right.
This is, we look at it now as a failed experiment, you know, and of course, no one. I mean, China is, but they're more of a dictatorship.
They're a dictatorship.
like a family's dictatorship.
I wouldn't even call.
I'm just scared of the. I don't want to subpart too much, but
You are.
I'm going to.
Yeah.
When you're unethical, and you have technology,
We'll keep
and
going.
you'll do anything by any means to succeed, that worries me because that creates no limits.
No.
And technology is immoral, so it doesn't care.
How you use it.
Artificial intelligence doesn't care how you use it. You know, like the United States just came into this whole thing saying, well, we've got to get into the unmanned artificial intelligent drones because China's doing it.
Yeah.
So now you have these swarm of drones coming into a city, and they're deciding who's a terrorist and who's not,
Yeah.
and then killing a person. And
Correct.
there's no human action involved in it. Maybe the programming of
I just
who's
put the,
pictures of
algorithm
the
in.
terrorists.
Right.
Yeah. But China doesn't have, I mean, we've talked about this on our Turtle episodes, Turtle TCast. You guys, if you guys like this technology, you guys should subscribe to that podcast. But it's so funny to me. How do we bridge this? Even here, you know, we look at, and on higher density living, we talk about this. You look at what's happening here. This is unethical, what he's doing.
Yeah.
And there's a means why the government gets involved and why they do all these things. And the Russian government had a different purpose for this, and we'll get into that, why they wanted this. This is military-industrial complex shit.
We're getting there.
But it's so funny to me. Why do we feel like we can corrupt, maybe
Is that the word?
perverse
Okay.
creation?
There is a sense of control that people want to have. So if I don't want to take the time to understand how my world works, I'd rather create a fraction of it, a false reality, which I can then control, and then I become the determinant God. Because at that point, I don't have to really put in a lot of effort
Right.
to evolve or do any of these things. If I have control, it eradicates my fear of unknowledge that I have. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
And now I can
exactly.
have technology to essentially reinforce the walls of my false reality. And then from that, I can impress my thoughts, my ideas, my belief systems onto others. I can essentially force them into it with technology.
So do you think that somebody like Ivanov, or, you know, you look at the and I don't think all the Chinese government's bad. They do a lot of good things too, like in the sense of, I really like what in centralized government. You have to have some of that where people agree and stuff
Yeah.
like that. Like what they're doing with TikTok, I think is amazing with young people. What China's doing is like after 9 o'clock, it's shut off. And then after you swipe so many times, then it puts like a scientist or somebody positive that's in the community. It puts their,
Do you know what
thing
it
on
reminds me of? Like you go to buy cigarettes.
Yeah.
It's got the Surgeon General warning.
Yeah.
This causes cancer.
Right.
That's all they're saying.
Yeah. So those things are not bad, but you get these nefarious people who have this godlike complex.
There's a lot of people that have it.
And yeah, I mean, we can look at the 1% in here. How I see it is when you have people that, like the IRS letter who says you owe me $22, they don't feel like they even need to give you an explanation of what the $22.46 is.
They think in their structure they are the highest authority.
Yes.
And if you don't pay it,
they'll penalize you.
They'll penalize you by actually just blocking your paychecks. They have full authority over your pay.
Yeah. So,
every hour you work just becomes
Yes.
indentured servitude at that point.
Yeah, and so it's funny to me that it gets to the point to where somebody can feel like they have this much power where there's no, maybe I think this word is right, where they have no humility.
Yeah, you cross the line, right? And then you're like, okay. You turn around and it's like, that wasn't that far. But then all you do is you take little inches further and further and further. And then you look back, you're like, fuck, I crossed that line so far. So far.
Because here they're going against the free will of the chimpanzee.
Oh,
it's still a creational being, and it's fairly intelligent. They don't want to be there.
Wow.
And they don't want to, I mean, they may like to get whacked off or whatever.
Or shoved in an airplane.
But they don't want to get shoved in
dropped off in
or train or
Abkhazia
whatever.
or wherever it was.
I mean, they all died. So this is the part that gets me on this. Is it's like, why do we get to the point to where we feel like we can have this godlike complex to the point to where we feel like we can control creation when we know through history every time we try to take control of it, it turns into a disaster.
Every single time.
Every single time.
There's an amazing short-sightedness that we as human beings have. We don't want to put our attention into remembering mistakes. We don't.
No.
If we really did, I mean, think about how fast we'd all be evolving. But no one wants to consciously focus on where we fucked up, where it didn't work before, or brush over it. Maybe it'll work better next time. There's a difference between tinkering to actually really make something better, and the other one is just bleeding ignorance and doing processes over and over. And that's what it is. It's like, I just want to be completely ignorant of the past, and I think I can probably do it better because someone else had screwed up in their process.
Yeah, it's like if you have a chimpanzee that doesn't survive in the wild, maybe has a missing arm or something, it's going to get killed and died. I'm all for a zoo taking that and letting it have rehabbing it and letting it have a great life. If it has a missing arm, it's probably is going to have to stay in the zoo for the rest of its life.
Correct. It's not going back in the wild.
Yeah, it's not going back in the wild. And so from there, if they want to, as long as they're not like hurting it, if they want to study the animal and get more, if it's because it can fall in love with people, and stuff like that, and trainers, I'm all about that. Like that's great. But when I go to a zoo, I'm always depressed because it's like these animals don't want to be here and they're perfectly healthy.
And that's why in part 2, we're going to talk about your depression.